The kitchen of the Gilded Spoon was a symphony of controlled chaos. Stainless steel gleamed under the harsh overhead lights, reflecting the frantic ballet of chefs and kitchen staff. Pans sizzled, knives clattered against cutting boards, and the air hummed with the focused intensity of a fine dining establishment, gearing up for its evening service. Amidst this whirlwind, Anya Sharma moved with a quiet, almost ethereal efficiency. She was a kitchen assistant, barely more than a shadow, her presence so unassuming she often blended into the background hum of sizzling pans and clattering cutlery. Anya was in her mid-20s, small of stature, with quick, precise movements that belied her quiet demeanor. Her apron, unlike those of many of the more boisterous junior chefs, was perpetually spotless, a testament to her meticulous nature. Today, her task was vegetable prep mountains of carrots, potatoes, and onions, each one to be peeled, diced, or julienned with perfect uniformity, while other junior chefs barked orders, jostled for attention, or gossiped in hushed tones. Anya worked silently, her focus intense, her hands moving with a practiced grace. Her mind, however, was miles away, simmering with the quiet creativity that defined her true passion. Her modest apartment, too, reflected this quietude. It was small, a single room above a bustling street, but it was her sanctuary. The comforting scent of simmering spices, cinnamon, cardamom, a hint of ginger, often hung in the air from her own small, experimental cooking. A worn, handwritten recipe book, its pages dog-eared and stained with countless culinary experiments, lay open on her tiny kitchen counter, a silent testament to a gift inherited from her grandmother. Each evening, after a long day of peeling and scrubbing, Anya would prepare her simple meal, often a variation of some humble, comforting dish she had concocted herself. She would eat it alone, savoring each bite, a small, private moment of profound culinary delight, a connection to the flavors that spoke to her soul. She might be overlooked at work, but in her own kitchen, she was the master. One particularly frantic Saturday night, during the peak dinner rush, the kitchen of the Gilded Spoon became a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Orders screamed from the pass, flames roared from the stoves, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. A new, inexperienced line cook, barely out of culinary school, stumbled. In his haste, he accidentally tipped a ladle, spilling a crucial, delicate saffron-infused sauce all over a meticulously plated sea bass just seconds before it was meant to be sent out to table 7. "No, are you mad?" bellowed Chef Dubois, the head chef, his face a mask of incandescent fury. "Get that out of here. Start again. Do you know how long that sauce takes? We're backed up." Panic erupted around the station. The young cook looked utterly terrified, his hands trembling. The sea bass, a masterpiece seconds earlier, was now a ruined mess. Without a word, without a moment's hesitation, Anya, who had been quietly prepping garnishes at an adjacent station, assessed the disaster. It wasn't her station, not her responsibility, but she saw the young cook's terror, the chef's fury, and the impending delay that would ripple through the entire restaurant. Her mind, quick and intuitive, began to race, sifting through the available ingredients. She knew the base of that saffron sauce, the essential notes. With quiet calm, she stepped in. Her movements were fluid, almost invisible to the frantic eyes around her. She grabbed a small, clean saucepan, a few key spices from a rack, a fresh lemon, and a carton of rich cream. Her hands moved with astonishing speed and precision, a blur of practiced grace. She didn't attempt to perfectly replicate the original. Instead, she improvised. A quick, intense reduction of vegetable stock, a judicious pinch of saffron threads infused directly into warm cream, a squeeze of fresh lemon to brighten the flavors, a whisk, a quick taste. It was a simpler sauce, yes, but in its subtle complexity, its surprising depth, it not only saved the dish, but, in its very essence, elevated it. In mere seconds, A small pot of golden aromatic sauce sat ready. She poured it over a fresh piece of sea bass, garnishing it with the carefully prepped herbs, then wiped the plate clean with a practiced swipe of a towel. The dish was identical, yet somehow more vibrant. She quietly placed it on the pass, then, just as swiftly, cleaned up the spilt sauce and the mess, disappearing back into her duties before Chef Dubois, too consumed by the demands of the moment, or the grateful young cook, could truly thank her. The restaurant's flawless service continued, a silent testament to Anya's unseen brilliance. Later that night, as the kitchen finally quieted down, Anya ate her simple meal alone in her apartment. The day's events replayed in her mind, a fleeting surge of satisfaction. Her fingers unconsciously traced the small, tarnished silver locket that always hung discreetly beneath her uniform, a silent guardian against her skin. Sometimes, when she was entirely alone, her fingers would trace the intricate, faded carving on its surface, a stylized culinary symbol, a small, ancient flame. A fleeting, almost imperceptible flicker of deep memory would cross her eyes when she smelled a particular spice, or when she glimpsed a forgotten cooking technique in an old book. It was a connection to her grandmother, a woman whose culinary wisdom was as much about instinct and heart as it was about technique. Her worn, handwritten recipe book, filled with intricate notes and unusual ingredient pairings, was more than just a collection of recipes. It was a personal history, a legacy. Its pages held secrets, not just of food, but of flavor combinations that healed, of ingredients that comforted, of techniques that whispered ancient truths. It was always kept hidden, tucked away in her locker at work, or deep within her apartment. Its contents her deepest, most guarded secret. It was a secret born not of shame, but of a quiet, profound understanding that her cooking was different, that its very essence lay beyond the rigid rules and expectations of the fine dining world she inhabited. The hum of the Gilded Spoon kitchen, usually a comforting backdrop to Anya's work, took on a new, unsettling resonance one brisk autumn morning. A gleaming notice, crisp and official, appeared on the staff bulletin board, announcing the restaurant's annual Rising Star internal competition. This wasn't just any internal contest, it was a high-stakes event. The winning junior chef would not only have their original dish featured on the restaurant's prestigious national menu for an entire season, but would also win a significant monetary prize. This year, the stakes were even higher. The winning dish would represent the Gilded Spoon at the coveted National Culinary Awards, a competition that could launch a chef's career into the stratosphere. Anya read the notice, her heart doing a peculiar flutter and sink. A chance, a real chance. But then, the familiar tendrils of self-doubt began to coil around her. Her cooking was different. It wasn't the haute cuisine, the delicate foams and meticulously arranged microgreens. That defined the Gilded Spoon's reputation. Her dishes were rooted in a deeper, more personal tradition, comforting, soulful, imbued with flavors that told stories rather than merely presented techniques. She imagined Chef Antoine Dubois, the restaurant's renowned head chef, tasting her grandmother's humble lentil stew, the whispering lentils, and his likely disdain. Chef Antoine Dubois was a titan in the culinary world, a master of classic French cuisine, and fiercely traditional. His kitchen was a temple to precision, technique, and a certain kind of refined arrogance. He held little patience for anything he deemed unrefined or rustic. Anya admired his skill, but she also feared his judgment. Knowing her personal style was miles removed from his exacting standards, the thought of presenting her deeply personal dish, a dish that was more heart than flash, to his critical palate filled her with dread. Her internal conflict was fierce. The desire for anonymity, for the quiet safety of her unnoticed life, battled fiercely with a desperate, burgeoning need. She had kept it a closely guarded secret, but her younger sister, Mira, was gravely ill, a rare, escalating autoimmune condition that demanded urgent, expensive medical treatment. Anya worked extra shifts, saved every spare penny. But the medical bills were mounting, a relentless, crushing weight. The prize money from the Rising Star competition was substantial, enough to pay for Mira's life-saving procedures, enough to lift the crushing burden from her shoulders. The image of Mira's frail face, her eyes still sparkling with a youthful hope despite the pain, gnawed at Anya. She recalled Mira's whispered gratitude, her quiet courage. This wasn't about Anya's ego, it was about Mira's survival. Her ambition, usually a quiet simmer, now began to boil with a fierce, protective heat. She grappled with the potential humiliation, the public dismissal of her simple dish against the complex, haute cuisine expected from the Gilded Spoon. But the alternative, Mira's deteriorating health, was unthinkable. With a deep, shaky breath, Anya made her decision. She would submit the whispering lentils. It was her grandmother's signature dish, a deceptively simple yet profoundly flavorful lentil stew that she had perfected over years, learning to coax every nuance of flavor from humble ingredients. It was a dish that had comforted her family through generations, a dish that tasted of home and resilience. It was the only dish that truly represented her heritage, and her deep, intuitive understanding of flavor. The submission deadline loomed. Anya spent her nights meticulously refining the recipe, coaxing even more depth from the lentils, balancing the spices with a subtle hand. She worked in secret, sketching out plating ideas, experimenting with garnishes. The process was a mix of exhilarating creativity and agonizing self-doubt. During a particularly stressful lunch shift, the kitchen was a crucible of heat and noise. Anya was working the prep station, methodically dicing onions, when a conversation drifted over from Chef Dubois' office, the door slightly ajar. His voice, usually a booming command, was now a low, mocking murmur, punctuated by the high-pitched sycophancy of Julian Cross, Chef Dubois' favored protégé. Julian was a young, ambitious chef, technically brilliant but, to Anya's discerning palate, lacking true soul in his cooking. He was arrogant and keenly aware of his elevated status within the kitchen hierarchy. Honestly, Julian. Chef Dubois chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. The audacity of some of these submissions, rustic dishes, simple, home-style fare. As if the Gilded Spoon is suddenly a diner. Someone even submitted a lentil stew. Can you imagine lentil stew for the National Culinary Awards? The words were laced with condescension, clearly aimed at Anya's entry, though her name was never explicitly mentioned. Julian's snickering agreement filled the air. Anya's hands stilled, the knife poised over an onion. A hot flush spread across her cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. They were mocking her grandmother's dish, the dish she poured her heart into, the dish she hoped would save her sister. Just then, a small flyer slipped under the kitchen door, caught her eye. It was for a local charity drive, raising awareness and funds for Mira's rare condition. It highlighted the urgency of treatment, the crippling cost, and the rapid progression of the illness. The image of Mira's pale, brave face stared back at Anya, a silent plea. The combination of Chef Dubois' sneering dismissal and the desperate, urgent plea from the flyer was a powerful, catalyzing force. It crystallized Anya's resolve, transforming her self-doubt into a steely determination. This wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about saving Mira. Her sister's survival hinged on Anya taking this monumental risk, embracing her unique culinary heritage, and fighting for a chance at the prize, no matter the personal cost, no matter the humiliation. She would not retreat. The whispering lentils was more than a dish. It was a prayer, a promise, a beacon of hope. Anya gripped the knife again, her movements now imbued with a fierce, quiet purpose. The gentle hum of the kitchen, once unsettling, now felt like a battle cry. The point of no return had been crossed. The air in the private tasting room of the Gilded Spoon was thick with anticipation, and the rich, complex aroma of diverse culinary creations. It was the preliminary round of the Rising Star competition, a crucible where culinary dreams were either forged or crushed. Chef Antoine Dubois, imperious and critical, presided over the judging panel, his gaze sweeping across the array of meticulously plated dishes with a connoisseur's practiced disdain. Beside him sat Chef Isabelle Laurent, a renowned culinary critic and, whispered to be, a former protégé of Chef Dubois himself. Unlike Dubois, Laurent was known for her discerning palate. Yes, but also for her open mind and her appreciation for innovation. One by one, aspiring chefs presented their elaborate creations. There were intricate terrines, delicate consommés, and molecular gastronomy marvels, each a showcase of complex techniques and expensive ingredients. Chef Dubois offered terse, often dismissive comments, while Chef Laurent took meticulous notes, her expression thoughtful. Anya stood at her station, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Her dish, the whispering lentils, sat before her, deceptively simple in its presentation. A humble earthenware bowl held a rich, aromatic lentil stew, garnished with a swirl of cream and a scattering of fresh herbs. It lacked the architectural flair, the vibrant colors, the sheer flash of the other dishes. Anya felt a prickle of self-consciousness, her earlier resolve momentarily wavering. This was her grandmother's legacy, a dish born of necessity and love, not Michelin stars. When her turn came, Anya stepped forward, her hands steady despite the tremor in her stomach. "Good morning, chefs," she said, her voice soft but clear. "This is the Whispering Lentils, a dish inspired by my grandmother's recipe." She offered no grand pronouncements, no elaborate descriptions of technique. The dish had to speak for itself. Chef Dubois picked up his spoon. He surveyed the dish, his eyes narrowed in visible disdain. A faint, almost imperceptible scoff escaped his lips. "Lentil stew," he murmured, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "At the Gilded Spoon, this truly is an interesting choice." He took a condescending bite, his expression prepared for disappointment. But then, something shifted. His initial reaction was indeed one of dismissal, his jaw tensing, a subtle shake of his head beginning. But as the flavors bloomed on his palate, an unexpected jolt went through him, a profound depth, a hidden complexity, a warmth that seemed to spread from his tongue to his very core. His eyes, initially dismissive, widened almost imperceptibly. His chewing slowed. A flicker of surprise, then grudging recognition, crossed his face, though he quickly suppressed it, masking it with a familiar scowl. He took another, slower bite. The flavors were profound, unexpectedly layered, echoing with a simple truth he rarely encountered in his world of intricate, often contrived, cuisine. He cleared his throat, pushing the bowl slightly away. "It is quaint home cooking," he pronounced, his voice dismissive, yet lacking its usual bite. "Perhaps suitable for a small bistro, but it lacks the sophistication, the refinement, expected from the Gilded Spoon. It is child's play, in a culinary sense." He avoided looking directly at Anya, his gaze flickering to the next dish. Chef Isabelle Laurent, however, had been watching Chef Dubois closely, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. She knew his tells, the subtle shifts in his demeanor. She picked up her spoon. Her first bite was deliberate. Her eyes closed for a moment, savoring the flavors. Unlike Dubois, she didn't mask her reaction. A soft gasp escaped her lips. The dish was surprisingly profound, memorable, its simplicity a deceptive cloak for a truly masterful blend of flavors. She took another bite, then another, a look of genuine delight dawning on her face. This was not child's play. This was soul. Only Chef Dubois, wrestling with his own unexpected reaction, and Chef Laurent, with her discerning palate, truly grasped the subtle impact of the dish. A few close, observant junior chefs, those who shared Anya's quiet passion for food and often experimented with humble ingredients in their own time, also registered the unique aroma and the way the judging panel reacted. The rest of the kitchen staff were too caught up in their own presentations, or too dismissive of Anya and her perceived lack of ambition, to notice anything beyond Dubois' public dismissal. The tasting round concluded. Chef Dubois, despite his internal struggle, remained outwardly consistent with his initial judgment. He publicly dismissed Anya's entry, reiterating his earlier comments. While commendable in its simplicity, he announced to the room, Ms. Sharma's dish is unrefined. It lacks the sophistication, the technique, the art expected from a dish that would represent the gilded spoon. He then actively steered the conversation and the other judges away from the whispering lentils, praising another, more visually extravagant dish, a complex deconstructed salmon submitted by his favored protege, Julian Cross. Julian, a tall, impeccably dressed chef, beamed, accepting the praise with an arrogant nod. Unbeknownst to the judges, Julian had subtly sabotaged 2 other promising dishes during the prep stage, a fact only noticed by 1 or 2 junior cooks who were too intimidated to speak up. Following the judging, Chef Dubois made his disdain for Anya's rustic approach clear. He summoned her to his office later that day. Ms. Sharma, he stated, his voice devoid of warmth, while your efforts are noted, your style is not aligned with the standards of the Gilded Spoon. I'm assigning you to the scullery for the next 2 weeks, and after that, more demanding prep tasks. It's important you understand the fundamentals before you attempt creative endeavors. Stick to what you know. The assignment was a thinly veiled demotion, designed to exhaust her and keep her away from any further creative pursuits. He subtly implied she should stick to what she knows, hoping to quell any burgeoning ambition. Anya felt the familiar sting of dismissal, but it was dulled by a quiet defiance. She knew what her dish was. She knew its truth. She simply bowed her head and accepted the tasks. As she turned to leave, a hand gently touched her arm. It was Chef Isabelle Laurent. Her eyes, warm and empathetic, met Anya's. Ms. Sharma, she said, her voice low and sincere. Your whispering lentils. It is a truly remarkable dish. It tells a story. It has soul. Do not let anyone tell you that true flavor resides only in complexity. It resides in truth. She pressed a business card into Anya's hand. If you are ever willing to explore your talent more openly, beyond the confines of this kitchen, call me. I believe you have something truly extraordinary to offer the culinary world. The card, crisp and elegant, offered a glimmer of hope in the dismissive aftermath, hinting at a potential mentorship that could transcend Chef Dubois' narrow vision. Anya clutched the card, a seed of possibility planted amidst the harsh realities of Chef Dubois' judgment. The initial confrontation had been bruising, her talent dismissed as child's play. But in Chef Laurent's quiet acknowledgement, and the subtle, lingering memory of Chef Dubois' momentary falter, Anya knew that the true unveiling was yet to come. The main dining room of the Gilded Spoon, usually a sanctuary of hushed conversations and clinking silverware, had been dramatically transformed. Spotlights gleamed down on gleaming culinary stations, each one a miniature battleground. A large digital timer, stark and unforgiving, dominated one wall, counting down the minutes. This was the final, live cooking round of the Rising Star competition, a spectacle amplified by cameras broadcasting the event live on local culinary channels. The air thrummed with a nervous energy, palpable even in the prestigious rows of culinary critics, investors, and media gathered to witness the making of a new star, or the crushing of a hopeful one. Anya stood at her station, the sterile stainless steel reflecting her focused gaze. She was keenly aware of the weight of expectation, not for herself, but for Mira. The prize money, The desperate hope for her sister's recovery fueled a quiet fire within her. Yet, the pressure was immense, a suffocating blanket woven from her own self-doubt and the public nature of the event. Throughout the preceding rounds, Julian Cross, Chef Dubois' favored protégé, had been a subtle, insidious presence. Anya had noticed minor accidents at her station, a misplaced utensil, a slightly off measurement on an ingredient she was about to use, a subtle shift of her prepped items to the back of the communal fridge, making them harder to find. She'd also overheard whispers, cleverly planted by Julian, about her unprofessionalism and her lack of serious ambition. Julian was a master of passive aggression, his actions almost impossible to prove, yet undeniably effective in undermining her confidence. The final challenge was to recreate their submitted dish, the whispering lentils, under immense pressure, and present it to the final panel, which now included a formidable array of national culinary figures. Anya had meticulously prepared, confident in her ability to execute her grandmother's beloved recipe. She had carefully brought her crucial, unique ingredient, a rare aged lentil variety that she cultivated herself in a small urban garden plot, known for its profound depth of flavor and unique texture, tucked away in a specially marked container. Just moments before the competition began, as the final checks were being made, Anya reached for her precious lentils. Her heart lurched. The container was there. But inside, instead of her carefully cultivated, aged lentils, was a common inferior substitute, small, pale, and utterly devoid of the rich hue and distinctive aroma of her own. It was clearly an act of deliberate sabotage, Julian's doing. She glanced across the brightly lit arena. Julian was at his station, putting the finishing touches on his own elaborate dish, a triumphant, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. Chef Dubois, observing from his position near the judge's table, avoided her gaze, his expression unreadable, though Anya sensed a veiled anticipation of her failure. A cold dread seeped into Anya. Panic, sharp and suffocating, threatened to overwhelm her. Her unique ingredient, the very soul of her dish, was gone, replaced by something common, flat. There was no time to explain, no time to get new ingredients, no time to even process the betrayal. The clock was ticking down, mercilessly. She was isolated, seemingly outmaneuvered, with no one to truly trust in this high-stakes environment. The culinary world was watching, expecting perfection, not improvisation born of desperation. "Chefs, prepare your stations," a booming voice announced over the loudspeakers, signaling the start of the final round. The large digital timer on the wall flashed to life, beginning its relentless countdown. Anya felt a surge of indignation, quickly followed by a steely resolve. Julian had tried to break her, to sabotage her chances, to dismiss her, but she would not yield. Her grandmother's spirit, the quiet strength that had taught her to find beauty and flavor in the most humble of ingredients, stirred within her. The whispering lentils was more than just a recipe. It was a testament to resilience, a philosophy of making something profound from the overlooked. Chef Dubois' voice cut through the nervous chatter, amplified over the microphone. Ostensibly a general comment, but clearly aimed at Anya. "A true chef," he announced, his tone subtly condescending, "can overcome any obstacle, even one of their own making. Remember, gentlemen and ladies, resourcefulness is as important as technique." It was a thinly veiled jab, a public suggestion that her current predicament was due to her own mismanagement of ingredients, further isolating her, forcing her to bear the burden of both the sabotage and the public accusation. Anya closed her eyes for a split second, taking a deep, fortifying breath. She heard the judge's unspoken skepticism, Julian's triumphant smirk, and Chef Dubois' cutting remark. The time pressure was immense, the task seemingly impossible: recreate the core flavor profile of the whispering lentils with a vastly inferior ingredient. All while the clock ticked down, and the eyes of the culinary world watched her every move. But a vision of Mira's face, pale but brave, flashed in her mind. Her sister's survival depended on this. Eleanor touched the silver locket beneath her apron, its cool metal a tangible link to her grandmother's enduring wisdom. This was not just a competition anymore. It was a fight for hope, a fight for the future. She would show them that true culinary art wasn't about expensive ingredients or elaborate techniques, but about soul, ingenuity, and the ability to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, even under the most impossible of circumstances. She would transform these common lentils, and in doing so, transform her own destiny. The digital timer on the wall glowed an unforgiving red, its merciless countdown amplifying the oppressive silence of the Gilded Spoon dining room. Every eye, from the esteemed culinary critics to the curious media, was fixed on Anya Sharma. She stood at her station, facing the sabotaged ingredients, the public ridicule, and the seemingly impossible task of transforming common, inferior lentils into a dish worthy of a national award. Julian Cross watched from his station, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips, confident in her imminent failure. Chef Dubois, a stoic observer, had a gaze that seemed to predict her downfall. Anya closed her eyes for a split second, taking a deep, shuddering breath. The clamor of the kitchen, the weight of the cameras, faded. All she could hear was the quiet strength of her grandmother's voice, a memory from her childhood kitchen, whispering encouragement. She felt the cool, familiar metal of the locket beneath her apron, a tangible link to a legacy of love and resilience. When her eyes opened, the fear was gone, replaced by an incandescent focus, a quiet fury, and an unwavering resolve. She didn't panic. Instead, her hands, guided by an intuition honed over years of quiet dedication, reached for seemingly ordinary, often overlooked kitchen staples. Not the rare, expensive ingredients favored by the Gilded Spoon, but the humble, workhorse items that often held hidden depths. A forgotten sprig of thyme from a discarded trimmings pile, a small handful of dried porcini mushrooms, tucked away in a dusty corner of the pantry, a splash of rich, homemade vegetable broth she always kept hidden in a small container, a personal emergency stash. With astonishing speed and a precision that bordered on preternatural, Anya began to perform a series of unorthodox, almost improvisational culinary techniques. She didn't follow a recipe, she danced with the ingredients, coaxing out their hidden potential. First, she flash-roasted the common lentils in a dry pan, the sudden, intense heat bringing out a deeper nuttiness, a richer aroma that mimicked the complexity of her aged variety. The scent, initially subtle, began to fill her immediate workspace, catching the attention of the judges. Next, she created a quick, intense aromatic infusion. The dried mushrooms and thyme, steeped briefly in hot water, released an earthy, umami-rich liquid that she quickly strained and added to her simmering lentils. Her hands moved with a fluid grace, a practiced ballet of chopping, stirring, and tasting. Each adjustment, each addition, was a stroke of genius, born not of formal training but of an innate understanding of flavor profiles. She adjusted the seasoning with a fearless hand, adding pinches of exotic salts and a hint of smoked paprika, transforming the blandness of the common lentils into something complex and alluring. She employed an ancient family technique, passed down through generations, a method for developing profound umami from humble ingredients. It involved subtle heat control, precise timing of her additions, and a delicate emulsification process that blended the flavors into a cohesive, velvety whole. It was a secret weapon, a quiet culinary alchemy that Chef Dubois, for all his classical training, would never recognize. Her movements were seamless, a testament to countless hours spent in her own kitchen, experimenting, perfecting, listening to the whispers of ingredients. Just as she meticulously plated the dish, a perfectly formed mound of rich, dark lentils garnished with a whisper of fresh cilantro and a drizzle of fragrant olive oil. A sudden power flicker plunged the entire kitchen into a momentary, heart-stopping darkness. The overhead lights died, plunging the brightly lit arena into a dim, uncertain gloom. A collective gasp went through the audience. Panic flashed across the faces of other competitors, their hands freezing, their dishes momentarily abandoned. For a terrifying second, it seemed all was lost. Her dish potentially ruined, the timer still ticking in the agonizing silence. But Anya, guided by her senses, did not falter. Her movements remained unbroken, fluid, as if the darkness made no difference. She had perfected this dish countless times in her own dimly lit kitchen, relying on touch, smell, and the subtle sounds of simmering ingredients. Using the faint ambient light filtering in from the dining room, her hands moved with an almost preternatural certainty, pouring the final, perfectly emulsified sauce, a concentrated reduction of the infused mushroom broth, over her dish. Her senses were her guide, her intuition, her compass. The lights flickered back on just as she placed the last plate on the pass, seconds before the buzzer blared, signaling the end of the round. A collective sigh of relief, then a renewed buzz, went through the room. Chef Dubois, who had been observing Anya's frantic improvisation with a mixture of disdain and growing disbelief, now approached her station. His expression was stern, but there was a flicker of something new in his eyes, a grudging curiosity. He picked up his spoon and took a bite of the whispering lentils. His eyes, initially narrowed in skepticism, slowly widened. He took another bite, then another, a look of profound, almost spiritual recognition dawning on his face. The dish, despite the inferior lentils, was extraordinary. It didn't just taste good, it tasted true. It told a story, a profound truth in every bite, a harmony of flavors that resonated deep within him. His expression shifted from hoary dismissal to shock, then to unadulterated awe, and finally, a deep, humbling respect. The other judges, including Chef Isabelle Laurent, followed suit. Their faces reflected a similar journey. Chef Laurent's eyes widened, a quiet smile spreading across her face as she savored the flavors, a look of vindication in her gaze. The other critics, initially polite, then surprised, their expressions shifting to utter fascination as they took bite after bite. As the scores were tallied, the silence in the room became absolute, charged with anticipation. Then, the announcement came. Anya's dish was declared the undisputed winner, not just of the Rising Star competition, but the recipient of the coveted national award for its profound depth of flavor and innovative spirit. The audience, initially skeptical of the amateur, erupted into a standing ovation, a roaring wave of applause that washed over Anya, vindicating her quiet brilliance. Julian Cross watched, his face draining of color, his triumphant smirk replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. His sabotage had not only failed, but had inadvertently highlighted Anya's undeniable genius. The explosion of applause that followed the announcement of Anya's victory echoed through the Gilded Spoon's transformed dining room, a symphony of vindication. Julian Cross, who had believed his sabotage foolproof, stood frozen, his face a ghastly shade of white as the reality of Anya's triumph and his own utter failure crashed down upon him. His meticulously crafted plan had backfired spectacularly, not only failing to derail Anya, but inadvertently showcasing the depth of her genius. The immediate aftermath was swift and merciless for Julian. Emboldened by Anya's win and the glaring injustice of his actions, several junior chefs, who had quietly observed Julian's manipulative tactics and minor accidents throughout the competition, bravely came forward. They recounted instances of his subtle sabotages, his rumors, and his condescending remarks, painting a clear picture of his destructive ambition. Chef Dubois, now acutely aware of his favored protégé's deceit, listened with a mixture of profound disappointment and righteous anger. Julian Cross was summarily fired from the Gilded Spoon, his reputation ruined, his culinary career effectively ended before it truly began. The tight-knit culinary world, unforgiving of such deceit, quickly blacklisted him. Chef Antoine Dubois, the renowned head chef, who had once dismissed Anya's dish as child's play, now approached her with a bowed head, his usual arrogance completely stripped away. His face was a mixture of humility and deep remorse. "Ms. Sharma," he began, his voice raspy with emotion. I was wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. I allowed my pride, my rigid adherence to tradition, to blind me to true culinary brilliance. Your dish, it was a revelation. It had a soul, a depth, a truth that none of my own creations, for all their technical perfection, have ever truly captured. I apologize. From the bottom of my heart, I apologize for my arrogance, for my grave misjudgment, and for the way I treated you. He didn't just apologize, he truly meant it. He not only championed her dish in every interview that followed, but became her most ardent supporter and mentor, helping her navigate the complexities of the culinary world and shielding her from the inevitable pressures of newfound fame. The prize money, a substantial sum, was the first thing Anya secured. Her sister, Mira, thin and frail, but her eyes still bright with hope, received the urgent, life-saving medical treatment she desperately needed. The financial burden, which had pressed down on Anya's shoulders for so long, lifted, replaced by an immense wave of relief and gratitude. Mira's road to recovery would be long, but it was now possible, a tangible outcome of Anya's courage. The whispering lentils became the most celebrated dish on the Gilded Spoon's menu. It drew unprecedented crowds, eager to taste the dish that had conquered a national competition and shattered culinary prejudices. Rave reviews poured in from critics, praising its profound depth of flavor and its unexpected, comforting complexity. Under Chef Dubois' guiding hand, and with the restaurant's new, more open philosophy, Anya was quickly promoted, ascending the ranks until she became the executive chef of the Gilded Spoon. Yet, her true passion lay beyond the confines of a single prestigious kitchen. Her grandmother's culinary philosophy was not just about cooking, it was about connection, about healing, about the power of food to nourish both body and soul. With her newfound influence and the immense financial backing from her prize money, Anya established the Spice and Soul Collective. It was not a typical culinary school, but an institute dedicated to teaching intuitive, soulful cooking to aspiring chefs from all backgrounds, regardless of their financial means. It focused on forgotten culinary traditions, the art of coaxing extraordinary flavors from humble ingredients, and the philosophy of cooking with compassion, patience, and love, the very lessons her grandmother had instilled in her. Days after Mira's first successful treatment, Anya sat with Chef Isabelle Laurent in a quiet corner of the Spice and Soul Collective's newly renovated test kitchen. The air was warm, fragrant with the subtle aroma of simmering spices. Chef Laurent, now a close mentor and friend, took a slow sip of her tea, her gaze thoughtful. "Your dish, Anya," she remarked, her voice soft. It wasn't just a recipe. It was a philosophy, a song of the soul. It reminded me why I fell in love with food in the first place. Anya smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes, reflecting the quiet contentment in her heart. She touched the locket around her neck, its cool metal a comforting presence. "It was my grandmother's legacy." "Chef," she replied, her voice steady and clear. "She taught me that the truest flavors aren't found in expensive ingredients or elaborate techniques. They are found in compassion, in patience, and in the love poured into every dish." She believed food could heal, could tell stories, could connect people in ways words never could. She then shared the full, intimate story of her grandmother's past as a revered village healer and cook, a woman who used food as medicine, as comfort, and as a way to unite her community. The whispering lentils recipe, Anya revealed, was more than just a stew. It was a coded message of hope and resilience, passed down through generations of their family, a secret known only to them. It was a testament to the enduring power of quiet strength and hidden wisdom. Chef Laurent listened, her eyes wide with understanding, recognizing the profound depth of the culinary heritage Anya carried. 3 years later, the once frenetic kitchen of the Gilded Spoon pulsed with a different kind of energy. Under Anya's guidance, it had embraced a new philosophy, blending haute cuisine with the soulful, ingredient-driven cooking that was her hallmark. Chef Dubois, now a steadfast mentor, moved through the kitchen with a quiet respect, his booming commands replaced by insightful observations, his pride in Anya almost palpable. His own cooking, subtly influenced by Anya's approach, had found a new depth, a more profound resonance. Anya herself was thriving. Her sister, Mira, was not only fully recovered but was now a thriving young artist. Her vibrant canvases filled with the colors and energy of renewed life, a testament to Anya's sacrifice and love. Mira's studio, adorned with a small and framed photo of her and Anya in the Gilded Spoon kitchen, served as a constant reminder of the journey they had shared. The Spice and Soul Collective, Anya's culinary institute, had become a renowned institution. Its waiting list grew longer by the day, filled with passionate students from all walks of life. Drawn by Anya's unique approach to food, they came not just to learn recipes, but to understand the soul of cooking, to connect with the forgotten traditions and humble ingredients that Anya championed. The collective's kitchen was a lively hub, filled with the comforting aromas of simmering broths and fragrant spices, a place where innovation met tradition. Anya herself was now a revered culinary figure, known not just for her extraordinary talent but for her humility, her deep understanding of flavor, and her ability to inspire. She was a quiet force, a beacon of authenticity in a world often obsessed with superficial trends. True to her grandmother's philosophy, Anya extended her reach far beyond the confines of her successful ventures. She launched a series of charitable cooking workshops in underserved communities across the city. In bustling community centers and humble school cafeterias, she taught families how to create nutritious, delicious meals from humble, accessible ingredients. She empowered them with culinary knowledge, showing them how to stretch budgets without sacrificing flavor, and, more importantly, how to foster community through the shared act of cooking and eating. These workshops weren't just about recipes. They were about dignity, resourcefulness, and the joy of connection. She also established a scholarship fund for aspiring chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds, ensuring that talent, not wealth or privilege, dictated who got to pursue their culinary dreams. Many of her former students from the Spice and Soul Collective, now successful chefs themselves, volunteered at these workshops and contributed to the scholarship fund, a ripple effect of Anya's generosity. Her impact wasn't limited to the kitchen. Anya published a best-selling cookbook, The Whispering Lentils, A Culinary Journey of Soul and Spice. It featured not only her acclaimed recipes, but also the heartwarming stories of the communities she worked with and the rich culinary traditions she sought to preserve. Each chapter was a tribute to a forgotten ingredient, a humble technique, or a community's resilient spirit, weaving a narrative that was as nourishing as the food itself. One sunny afternoon, Anya stood in the bustling, sun-drenched kitchen of the Spice and Soul Collective. The air was alive with the happy chatter of her students, their faces alight with passion, their hands busy with chopping and stirring. She wasn't barking orders like the Chef Dubois of old. Instead, she moved among them. A quiet guide, her hands gently demonstrating a subtle technique, her quiet voice resonating with warmth as she explained the nuances of flavor development. A large, well-loved pot of whispering lentils simmered gently on a back burner, its comforting aroma filling the entire space, a constant reminder of the dish that had started it all. Anya glanced down at the silver locket around her neck, its stylized culinary symbol gleaming softly in the light. She then looked up, her gaze sweeping across her diverse group of students, young and old, from every background, united by their shared love of food. Her eyes, deep and knowing, sparkled with a profound joy. reflecting the vibrant tapestry of lives she had touched. The camera, drawing back, captured the scene, the diverse group of students, their hands busy, their spirits alight, a vibrant testament to the power of a simple dish to transform lives and echo a legacy of love, resilience, and flavor across the world. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.